he runs away from them, dodges them, shuffles his feet like Fred Astaire.
We had a lot of guys pass through these doors here and play for this team, but I can't think of anybody that was more beloved than Emlen Tunnell.
Outside John Mara's office hangs a portrait of former Giants safety and assistant coach, Emlen Tunnell.
It's in that location because it's something that I want to see every day when I come to work, because he was such a beloved member of this organization. I was younger, working as a ball boy at training camp, and just being on the field with him when he was coaching our defensive backs, he made you feel welcome and like you were the most important person in the world when he was talking to you. I used to look forward to coming home from school and sitting with him and talking with him about what was going on in my life.
If they're kicking a 40-yard field, though, that's a long ways. You ain't going to rush him, are you?
No, no.
He was the first full-time African-American coach, and then he becomes the first African-American player inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was a lot of things. A pioneer was certainly one of them.
The high punt drops into the waiting arms of Emlen Tunnell, and he does what the New York fans have been hoping for all afternoon as he dodges away from the outstretched hands of the Eagle defenders to romp 72 yards behind good blocking, adding another brilliant run back to his record and a touchdown to the New York side of the scoreboard.
For the time, he had really good size. I mean, 6'1", 210 pounds. Heck, he could play in the NFL today at safety. When you watch the footage of him, you can see what an intelligent player he is for being able to read a play and get to the football.
This is in an era where they didn't throw the ball all over the field. He retired with 79 career interceptions, which at the time was the record. Plus the fact he had records for punt returns.
He takes it, and he runs away from them, dodges them, shuffles his feet like Fred Astaire.
His nickname was Offense on Defense.
I grew up a big Giants fan. My son and I are on the phone one night talking about the Giants, and my son said, "Hey, Dad, do you know Emlen Tunnell?" And I said, "Yeah, Emlen Tunnell. He's a great defensive back, offense on defense." And he goes, "No, Dad, he was in the Coast Guard." I said, "What?"
A chance encounter by Coast Guard historian Bill McKinstry brought Tunnell's World War II service back to light.
A man by the name of Dan Fiorella, his father had just passed, and he was carrying his father's scrapbook from the war. In them were a lot of pictures of sports. On the back of one of the pictures was all the names of the players on the Coast Guard, servicemen champs from 1944. In the middle, on the very center, was Emlen Tunnell. So I thought there had to be more to this. I looked into Tunnell and his record.
In that time, the only position that an African-American, a person of color, was going to have in the Coast Guard was probably a steward's mate. And often, a lot of situations, that could be a food server. It's really striking to note that there's no nameplate on that uniform, and that's unusual in the military to not have a nameplate.
So the USS Emlen was attacked by the Japanese in Tepe, New Guinea during the Hollandia invasion. A torpedo struck basically center mass. Fred Shaver was a motor machinist first class, so he was down below trying to save the ship from sinking. And in the course of his duties, he became injured, extremely burned, well over, I think, 70 to 80% of his body. And he came up to the top, and he was on fire. And he was running, just trying to get away, and Tunnell tackled him and put him out and saved his life. He had burned his hands quite severely, but there was nothing in his record that stated that, but his medical record contained something else. He was based out of Naval Station Argentia, Newfoundland. They were playing football, throwing around a football, and one of his shipmates went after the ball and went over the side of the pier into 32-degree water. Now, Tunnell could not swim, or couldn't swim well, but he saw that his, shipmate was, floundering and getting ready to go below the surface, and Tunnell jumped into the water and pulled his friend to safety. And with that, Commander Ralph Jenkins of the Coast Guard cutter Tampa, put in a recommendation for him to get the Silver Life-Saving Medal. None of that came to pass because within a week, Tunnell had been discharged at Ellis Island, New York, and then went on with the rest of his life.
1946 saw Iowa beat Purdue 16-0. Tunnell on a fake pass easily skirts left end for a touchdown.
Tunnell starred at quarterback and running back for Iowa, then hitchhiked with $1.50 in his pocket for a tryout with the Giants.
All the conversations that I had with him over the years, he never mentioned his service. I had no idea that he had been this heroic figure until after he had passed away. He was a very humble individual, but I guess also that's part of that greatest generation where they just did their jobs and they didn't talk about it. It was just something that they were supposed to do.
In fall of 2021, the Coast Guard Academy dedicated a new weight and conditioning center in his honor.
Well before he was an NFL hero, he was an American hero. I want kids to be able to walk into that room and say, hey, I know what he did in the Coast Guard.
The Coast Guard also commissioned its 45th Rapid Response Cutter, named the Emlen Tunnell.
My son is the commanding officer of that ship, and he was asking me, Dad, what should we do for the motto? And Dan Rose, our athletic director, said, you know, his nickname was offense on defense. They're going on the offensive in defense of our nation. And that crew is pretty proud to wear the number 45 and to remember the legacy of Emlen Tunnell.